Good evening, Molweni Nonke, Goeienaand. Greetings, everybody. This is Faiez Jacobs, Member of Parliament here for Greater Athlone. It's a privilege and honor to have a guest in the studio. This is the podcast, my podcast. Welcome, Comrade Jeremy, General
Mm.
Jeremy Vearey, a legend in our ranks, comrade, friend,
Mm.
the people's general, author. Welcome, Comrade Jerry. How's things going?
Thank you, thank you. I call you minister or comrade or whatever I get to call you, but I want to respect you by your title. We are in a new situation also, but let's keep it informal.
Okay.
And also to everybody who's listening to this podcast, comrades, it really is an honor for me to sit here.
Yeah,
You
we've
know,
we've we brought Mandela spirit.
mm,
Jeremy,
mm,
this is a nice photo of the old man. I got it
mm,
from one of the activists.
mm.
Any fond memories that you have of this time? You were very
Yeah,
close to the man.
yeah, this is before, I can tell you it's before 1994. I can tell you that he's well rested when this was taken, because usually I used to know how he looks when he's tired or he tries to smile when he's tired.
Yeah,
But yeah, he's well rested. So this is a good memory of the old man when he's at his calm, rested self. You know.
yeah. No, so I decided to put the post up so he can also guide our conversation.
Yeah.
So Jeremy, today we want to just talk about
Mm,
everything safety and security on the Cape Flats, but also your journey. You are well loved, well known, well
mm,
respected on the Cape Flats. A policeman, a people's dinner
mm,
for more than 3 decades
mm,
already. You're also successful author of two
mm,
books. Um, I'd like to start by doing a quote from your book, uh, Into the Dark Water, a police memoir by Jeremy Vearey, and this is your second book.
mm.
Jeremy van die Elsies was the
Yes,
eerste
yes, yes,
ene.
yes.
I want to just read a quote. Policing islands. In a way, Cape Town isn't even a city. It is an archipelago. It's a series of islands where instead of water flowing between each piece of land, there are highways, train tracks, fields, mountains, and cemeteries. Some of these islands are amongst the world's most sought after tourist destinations in the world. Others have the highest murder rates in the country, and some services and facilities barely fit
Mm,
for human beings. The Tale of Two Cities.
mm,
This is a quote by Pumeza. And I'd like to start here by sketching the scene. You've
mm,
been a policeman in this area. The current genocide on the Cape Flats.
mm,
We've seen now almost a sense of hopelessness. Every day we do janazas. There was
mm,
another leader of a gang slain now
mm,
recently,
mm.
kidnapping, extortion, and just crime against women, children, vulnerable is on the increase. Is it becoming worse?
In terms of the violence out there, look, we've always lived on the Cape Flats with this violence. The gangs that we have around, hard livings, Americans are 50 years old. They come from before 1994. I think the difference now is because they come from the 80s and the 70s, where policing was political. It wasn't again focused on gangs to address the organized crime. They have grown into the sizes and empires and as armed as they are now. So they grew under a climate where they were not touched. So we are sitting in a situation now where it is almost where it's a contest for power in our areas. I mean, and to me, if gangs have reached a stage where they try to expropriate the area and call it in turf, tax everybody else, and affects everybody's freedom of movement, then I think they are becoming not only a community challenge to community and people's power, but also a challenge to state power, because no service delivery gets affected by that.
Mm.
People's constitutional rights to move around, to associate, gets affected by that. And to me, they become that is the challenge they have grown into. And policing, what it does not help us is that the same infrastructure islands, like you see there in the
Mm.
quote, that have existed for hundreds of years, for as old as some of the townships that we're talking about, whether you're talking Goose, Menenberg, whatever we're talking, Q Town, Dulcis River, those islands still exist.
Yeah.
So while we can correct with policing and try our best, the conditions that continue to exist in which people thrive is still like that. And that is the big challenge our communities must, together with the police, state power in the form of policing is only a support to the power of the community, an organized power of the community, because they must take back the streets, the community, in an organized fashion. And it's not like we're going to invent something new, man. It's if you go and talk to aunties in Mitchell's Plain, or you talk to cooks, everybody has a memory of being in the UDF and how the civic structures work, how the youth structures work. Some of us who are now this age, we have that. So we're not talking about inventing new things, man. So it's about getting back to that way of organizing and building people's power. Maybe different forms. Some people will have street committees, some people will choose neighborhood watch. Not everybody chooses the same form. And to also, one of the powerful things that we had in the past, if we could beat this, the National Party with all its armies. Who is the Hardlings gang, So those are some of the things I think that characterize the situation now. But at the economic level, what we must realize is that the gangs that we're facing, they are not boys standing on a corner anymore.
No.
Because such boys standing on a corner can't survive for 50 years. They are brands, they are business empires, criminal business empires, and they must be treated as such. We've got good legislation now, which never existed before. The Prevention of Organized Crime Act, POCA. Yeah, gang legislation, Chapter 4, racketeering in terms of the other chapters, assets forfeiture provisions, and it takes a certain kind of specialized investigation to deal with that. And here, what is said is what happened to the gang unit, where under Sitole, despite our president being told that the unit has been formed, they undermined our president. And they never gave due justice to what our president went to launch in Nova Park. It was all a show. Afterwards, people went back to being
no
little
resources
castings.
were provided,
No resources were provided. Nothing.
Cars, no demotion of our people. So no, I remember that, and it was quite a unfortunate. But it also speaks to the undercurrents in our society. We are a negotiated settlement. I mean, when we were young, we wanted a revolution, and we wanted change. We wanted freedom. And now we get old and we feel dreams deferred. And could have, should have, and all of those things. And I mean, we all have battle scars. I went through your book again, and police was a site of struggle.
Yeah, it was.
It is.
It still like
is.
that.
It still is. And even myself as a public rep now, member of parliament, I still see that site of struggle for our people's consciousness and our people's. There's still that divide and rule, and that's still of fear and othering that's still happening.
Yeah, it's true.
In this, and that's how people have been kept away from each other because that consciousness is being slowly eroding. And I always grapple with how do you get that back to our young people?
You see, I think sometimes we underestimate our young people. Just look what our young people did with Faiez must fall.
Yeah,
they nearly collapsed governance in this country with Faiez must fall.
Yeah, they
they presented a challenge to the security community that was unprecedented. They did it in a disciplined fashion. We might not have liked the fact that they all sat down in Rondebosch Main Road and nobody could move and the traffic was, but they made a point. But more importantly, beyond just blind militancy, I think back to when, who was it who was editor of the Argus at that time? Asant Abada. So the comrade gave me a call. He says, hey, Jeremy, it's not worried, these people, they've criticized him in the all over. They say they biased in independent media and all those things. So I said, look, to prevent them from marching there, man, why don't you give them an opportunity then to to get them on a platform then? Let them write the articles about it, because they say they're not being things. And the marvelous thing Hassan did is to give them that space. I mean, that was very great foresight, I'm seeing, from independent media to decide, wait, man, it is a radical voice. It's sometimes a bit things we don't like here, we're not very comfortable with. But let them articulate. And when they articulated it in that edition of the Argus, the level of consciousness, it might not be in your and our old terms, but the level of consciousness that involved their contributions and the depth of the research they went into to shape alternatives that they were arguing was very significant. So I think, sometimes it's we might be older, but we must use our access to allow the space for them to articulate their things in a certain way. I mean, after all, Faiez, you and I are getting old. We really want to build a future when we're not going to be around there. We should help the people, and they should lead. We should build their future beyond our lives.
Our legacy is to ensure that they take the reins now, even in the political space. I've also said that the young Turks must be able to assume. We can't have leaders ruling from the grave constantly. The government is now putting out recruiting 15,000 interns and young people, matric in the police. We have the constant battle between the neighborhood watches and the CPFs. And then you also see that the gangs are still recruiting, especially the colored boy, or so let's say African and colored boys, or even girls. And they have that recruitment going constantly. How do we get this new generation to be the new crime fighters? I mean, you come from a generation with Auntie Flory. And I love that story where Auntie Flory said, look, let's go and do the walk. Because if you take police with you experience them, and maybe share that reflections also.
You see, one of the things, and I was station commander of the Elsies River that I write about. The same thing happened in Mitchell's Plain. But what Auntie Flory did one day, when we were talking about people not coming forward and that, so Auntie Flory asked me, now, how the hell must we get the Elsies River police station in the middle of the night? And if you come out into the area, you come with 5-6 vans. We can't walk there. So you come with your vans, drive fast, as if you are more afraid of being here than we. I said, no, she has a point. She has a point. And I looked at the way Auntie Flory also intervenes amongst big gangs, and I was wondering, you're brave. I mean, if I could get 4 cops to do that, it would be significant. But anyway, she proved. So what Auntie Flory demonstrated to me is the importance of community power, but that it must be visible on the street with the police. And so you grow more people in your structures if they know the police are visible with them. And you must go walk. You must be prepared to risk where people risk where they live.
Concept.
Yes, you must be able to, if you want to expect people to patrol in neighborhood watches on foot, then you must also be prepared to do it. And that was to me, or in street committees, or in whatever structures people, that to me was the lesson that came with Auntie Flory. So she took us, and we went through the areas, okay? And I took every young recruit that came in. I said, before you get into the van, you're going to walk
with us,
because you're going to know the area better. You're going to be better. Driving in a van, you don't meet people. And 90% of policing is engagement with the community. And you cannot engage from behind a van, from inside a van. You must be out there physically. If you want to know what problems are out at the school today, you get out of the van and then you walk to the school, then you speak to the principal, you speak. So that was an important principle, I think. Part of that walking through the area with Auntie Flory was also learning who the networks are that I can draw on as a police officer. Even if I is not around. But being introduced in the street and people seeing that, listen,
And
there
I
are
think
senior officers that
we've
are
lost
working
that a
here.
bit now, no?
Yeah, we lost that, man. But you see, one of the challenges is twofold. I think one of the sad things is that CPFs have become bureaucratic structures who think that their role is only monitoring the police. Now, the problem with that is the Police Act, in terms of Section 17, that writes on the relationship between the community, says that policing, our relationship to the community, should be one of problem solving. Now, how are you going to jointly problem solve if you reduce the structures that you must work with to mere oversight reportage
So that's not
to
like
local
the
government?
that's not like the
That's not the spirit.
progressive,
Yeah, that's not the
the
spirit of the act.
developmental type
That's
of
not
community
developmental.
police
No, that's
thing
not.
that we wanted. You see, I see it now. People love to hate the police and they like to
Yeah,
complain and they like to
yeah.
this. But in the past, the community police forum was the quote that you said was people's policing with people
People here
for
for the
people.
people. That's the point.
So that's the point that we're seeing that's not there now. No?
And we as police officers, like I did with me and Mitchell's plane, if organizations were weak, we went to build the organization with the community so that we know our benefit lies in a very organized community and organized into as much as wider presence at a local level. That's why streets, we didn't focus on big campaigns and big organizations. Street presence becomes important, the most local form of organizing. Because not every auntie is going to walk like with me on a Friday night throughout Mitchell's Plain. You understand? Some people are interested in the locality and it's fine.
Yeah.
They will grow to blocks and to the bigger, but they're interested in the immediate vicinity. And that's where the power can be felt more regularly.
Because if I'm on a WhatsApp with my group in this area, then I will want to know who's working here and I think
all those things.
Yeah.
So I think that what is being lacked now, when you disband things like the Bambanani, like
they said that was like too much ANC, Bambanani.
No, it doesn't.
But just explain
let me explain. It's like what the street committees did at a broader scale. Bambanani people used to. There was a time when there was vigilantism like in Cali. When the Bambanani group was formed in an organized fashion, out of some of the people who were involved in these activities before, that kind of patrolling of streets to address crime became disciplined. And it grew in especially the more informal areas that are part of Kailicha or groups. It grew into very powerful structures. And the power lay in the fact, because most of us are used to street organization blocks or area based. You cannot organize in an informal area in that fashion because there are no streets. So the type of communities that emerged in the organized form in the Bambananis and those were the most effective structures to assist the police with the police. I mean, when people, I will take a practical example, Faiez, when people call the police, 10111, let's say they're living in Kosovo. I worked in Yanga also. They can't tell you what number the house is.
That's the street address.
So there's no street address. So who is going to ensure, firstly, one, that the police knows that immediately? And that's where the Bambananis came in, because they were rooted in those areas. We gave them airtime, and they could call us, meet us at a certain point. We must just get to that point fast enough. Then we walk with them into the area and we deal with the complaint. You understand? That is what those structures were. Now imagine those structures don't exist anymore. How are we going to get to a place?
So that's why we don't have
and we, for example, that's why the complaints there are now valid. That says we take a long time to get there. Because how are we going to get there? We're going to have a physical address. Do you understand what I'm saying? Because We move on a GIS system in the police. It is all based on a well-developed area with infrastructure,
Suburbs and
suburbs and those
streets and
things. So we must, in such circumstances, have strong community structures that can help us with accessing those areas so that we can respond to claim complaints in
look,
time.
I almost get a feeling there's almost a deliberate demobilization
Yeah,
or taking people's away from their people's power. I
yeah.
think a year or two just before COVID, there was the Gatful movement, and they were quite strong, and
Strong, yeah.
they mobilized communities, and they were saying, "Hey, we have this demands." A lot of them is also socio-economic issues. The street lights is still so crime thrives in these conditions where the socio-economic, where the state has failed these communities, then crime thrives. So what are what almost like the causal factors that we must also get our city of Cape Town to deal
Yeah.
with? I know the Kailicha Commission has no
Yeah. No.
the problem with the Kailicha Commission was that there's all of these factors like the street lighting, like the greenery, like creating safe
And
spaces,
none of those things were done.
and none of these almost 15 years ago.
They were good theories, good things, but a lot of those good ideas needed to be placed in practice. And I mean, I don't want to peg as if those ideas are only in the crime in the Kailicha Commission. They were there in the National Crime Prevention Strategy also. They were there. Those ideas were also prevalent in our national development plan. You know, all of these
reflect a bit
principles.
on
Let
that.
me explain
Just
something.
explain
We're
the
not talking
strategy
about
and the development plan for
Let
people
me,
that's at home.
the National Crime Prevention Strategy recognized the importance of material conditions under which how infrastructural ledge affects people's safety and security. It recognized it. And it saw that dealing with crime cannot be a policing problem on its own. It needs strong community partnerships and organization. It needs to look at the other material factors that makes things happen in Menenberg. It doesn't happen in Kempsville like that. In Menenberg, all years in for the past 60, 70 years. So there's something there that must be addressed. So the material determinants of crime, the socioeconomic determinants of crime, become an important because they create the climate under which these things thrive, which gangs exploit. You know, gangs would not exist outside of that climate. You know, you understand. They're there because of that. So then that is a recognition that the National Crime Prevention Strategy. But the sad thing is in our transition period, the police never paid attention to it. You know, it's one thing to blame politicians and say the money was not, but who should have asked for it? Who should have, every time an annual plan gets put in for the Treasury, where ever since 1995, and I don't believe in this Faiez was different and this one is different. But in all the commissions, to me, where is it reflected in the budget they asked that they are prioritizing those other parts? The police tried for some while with sector policing and the community policing idea, but did not sustain it. And then fell into this crime combating strategy, you know, just a visible part of thing and not looking at the prevention side. So if you want to see proof of how the police did not follow the policy directive of this government, of our government, just go and look at the expenditure, what they spend money on, and go look at all the annual plans and then evaluate what was achieved against that. Because that's the real test about whether, as the police, we are loyal to the policies and the developmental focus of our government.
Very important point.
You
I
know,
also want to chase the money because there's lots of resources going into police and safety.
yeah,
Even in the province also, the MEC is responsible for community safety plans. So, and the MEC has an oversight responsibility on the police. And we've picked up that the city also have like very, in my opinion, very skewed priorities. Like they have these drones and technology and smart technology mainly in your developed areas. But the lights are not on in Kailicha, or the
Yeah,
cameras are
yeah,
not
no,
working
that.
in Mitchell's Plain or Nyanga, or they put the drones in Milnerton, so they would deploy massive amounts of money, or even the sound spotter, this thing about where the guns go off. But if you
Yeah,
had paid by Manani or you volunteered, then they would tell you where the guns
guns
go off.
go off. Yeah,
So just a comment on that.
I think, I think that is, you know, the fact that they rely on that, that is in tandem with, I think, the destruction, demobilization of our communities, where CPFs are reduced to bureaucratic monitoring structures of the police, and its true role of building cohesion in the community and resilience and organizing, assisting with organization of our people, or becoming this united front, in our community safety forums that also speak to that idea, where these things become like the only mainstay. I would say they've taken all that short spotter and all the money and invested in community organization. Give people a fax, give people phones, give people airtime. If they're neighborhood watchers, let them use that to facilitate contact. Use the technology that way.
Yeah.
But it's not an investment in community power and structures. It's an investment in an add-on and a reactive facility after the fact. I mean, I ask myself, why do I need to know where the gunshot went off after the fact?
You need the intelligence
Yeah, I can
before.
get that from the community anyway. If I
Yeah.
have them well organized.
Yeah.
And locally, I can get all of that information much farther without that investment. Invest in building people, man.
Very important point in this.
And the second thing is I'll take with the tech that was around, the, the when he started off with the whole thing of cameras and all of those things. They put it up on those high rides in Kalicha and all those other areas in Mitchell's Plain. It didn't help us. Firstly, if you're going to have surveillance technology of that nature, it must be producing images of the standard that helps, is admissible as evidence in
Evidence in
anything.
court.
Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
Yeah.
I'm a detective. I mean, I can't go to thing with a grainy image and a vague thing. I used to watch those robbery ones when sometimes that happened there at Vanguard Drive between Langa and Pontyville.
Yeah.
You see the guys running that, but none of those images
Is admissible.
is admissible. It is not sufficiently identifiable.
At
And
least-
that is the problem. If you're going to invest in something of that, invest in decent stuff and invest in things that can be used evidentially because it has that particular quality. Otherwise, you're wasting time. You're putting how many people behind cameras to monitor something that you can't use,
Yeah.
you know?
And this notion that I want to get into the politics, because there's also this thing
Yeah.
that the police is a failure, and therefore it must be
Look.
decentralized,
No,
and
no.
the city must take it over, or the DA can do a better job with policing.
Firstly, I don't see what is so exceptional about this province, or any province in this country for that matter, from a policing perspective that justifies policing being provincialized. I don't see what is exceptional.
Nothing.
Unless we think the Western Cape is some unique island that requires a very special approach towards policing. What differs in the country is different forms of organized crime. We have gangs, KZN has construction mafias and all these kind of structures. Joburg has a different setup in Soweto. It's all the same. If you look at our POCA Act, it's the same crime with different names that people prefer to. They can be tackled in the same way. But one of the other things is organized crime is national level.
No, this is
Gangs is national.
actually.
International. Okay, international, you can't get past nation states, so we have Interpol and all those agreements. But inside this country, I mean, Ernie Lasta has an empire here, he gets killed while he's busy building an empire in Gauteng. What logic is there to provincializing the focus on anything? We have a law advocate Mahalix get shot here and assassinated. The hitman come from the Midlands. What logic is there? So you cannot have a policing structure, okay, where you have to take investigations across jurisdictions and some people can't move because they're locked into a province and it's it doesn't work. Tough story, you don't need that. So that's the first thing that I think makes it impractical. And quite frankly, some of the arguments that I see that underpin this, the national government, this and that, is nonsensical. Okay? It's nonsensical. Policing is something in an institution that goes independent of the politics that is up there.
Yeah.
If the police don't listen to you, they don't listen to you, whether you're DA or you think, they just don't listen to you. It's a different logic that functions there. Because that to me is the first challenge. But the second challenge that we have, and that's nothing to do with this national provincial thing. It's more an international thing in policing. Do you know the irony is the only people who put people in jail ultimately are detectives. No one else. Because they carry the docket. But they, in any police service across the world, the exception is China, of course. And the Moscow police in Moscow. Not the whole Russia, but they in particular. Where the detectives are bigger than the visible policing.
So
where people recognize that, listen, we have a strong visible policing component and they make assumptions about its militarized capability, but it's all been inherited from the time when the military actually used to police the colonies. And then we formed polices, so we built it around that identity first and the detective secondary. This is all over the world. And we must recognize that we need to shift.
So you're arguing that
you have to resource detectives, more detectives. More investigation, yeah. Because there's no proof that we can prevent anything. Now look at it. I always, I at one stage I was here in Claremont and Cape Town Central, and then people who are complaining were saying, they like the visibility in one area. Then I asked them, what is this visibility? Because the only people who are talking about visibility are the business people in Cape Town. No, the police is driving up and down. That doesn't deter the criminals. They just wait till you drive past. Or you have one massive saturation operation in Manenberg, and then afterwards they all move and then they come back and do the same thing. So you cannot sustain that model. But what you can sustain systematically is building up your detective capability. And that to me is a crucial thing in this country. It's going to lie there. So we have the recruits.
We need more investigative capacity.
So I would, for example, say with the allocation that is coming with the interns, if 70% of those people can go towards building our detective capability to free also the systems, because there's different levels of investigation skills and to free the older, more experienced people to tackle the organized crime, so that the other things like your housebreaking and all of those get, I don't want to say it's less prioritized, it's important, but it gets tackled by people. And that we look at these things differently. Faiez, a housebreaking and a theft might not be important to you here because you got insurance, or to the whites living on the other side of Sea Point. But to our auntie who bought a radio on hire purchase and a phone, and she's still paying the contract, it's a big thing. So in the ghetto, we must prioritize those crimes. I'm not going to waste my time with that crime here. Because I know you don't really want me in my house. Don't want me here too long. That's, I know, the areas of Claremont. They get conscientious, if you're taking too long with the fingerprints and all of those things. I know, because they're all interested in the insurance. But to the auntie out on the Cape Flats, that is fundamental. So to me, that is where we must prioritize to give more resources. There's no such thing as petty crime in the ghetto. It affects people's pockets. The other thing to me that I've noticed You know, Peter Jacobs, ne?
Mm.
Once we said, hey, a certain part of Nova Park, man, F-Park area, where the Americans are, there's a lot of gang violence, but there is also higher statistics of domestic violence historically than what there is in other parts of the Nova Park. Ne? Then we started looking into now, let's go a few generations back with a case history. Then we find some of these guys were lighties, who are now adults, but they grew up in households where there were domestic violence complaints. Then it set us thinking. Then we did something similar in Mrs. Plain, with Tafelsa. Then we realized something. You know, there's a convergence between these two things, and it's a simple one. The simple one is that lighty learns that the only way you resolve conflict is through violence long before he gets to school and long before he sees the gangs on the street. He learns it in the house. Yeah, so how is that lighty going to learn a different way? When he goes to the gang, he's ready, man. You know, he's seen, he's desensitive. So that's the one thing. So prioritizing the gender-based violence is as important to the victim of gender-based violence as it is to the children. More so the children, because the culture of that is deepened into resolving things with violence gets entrenched and reinforced constantly in a domestic violence. So that to me is an important side. And our detective resources, should really look at our family violence units and expand them. At the moment, they are fine, but they cannot handle the load that there is.
I wanted to make this point. On Friday, I did my quarterly oversight at Athlone Police Station, and I spent some time there with the trauma counselors and also the sergeants involved with the gender-based violence. And they're saying GBV is on the increase. So I'm asking, is it just a statistic thing? They said more because people are becoming more aware. So it's being reported more.
Yes.
But the child, they use the word, we are a hurting people.
Oh, yeah.
And our people are traumatized because the cycle of violence is starting, like you said, at the home. Issues of what is this, suicide, issues of trauma, of abuse, of dysfunctional homes is on the increase. And the one thing that they raised was, who's caring for the caregivers? Who's caring? Who's caring for the police, the counselors? So I think that was an important point. I want to come back to these high flyers, this concept of improving detective investigative capacity, improving crime intelligence, improving relationships with our communities, so that we can focus on the priority crimes. Are we being successful in dealing with the high flyers?
I think it's a mixed success. Okay. I mean, we did put Rashid Staghi away for a long time. We put Kanaki Boyson, the big one, back for a long time. We have major trials coming out now, like Impi with the guns to gangs. We have big trials that stations are also bringing, like the 28s in Kleinvlei and in Belha. The one I will testify in also, the Ralph Stanfield matter and the leadership of the 28 gang there. So we are tackling them with the right legislation, but because there's no investment in building that capability, we can never meet the pace. Because a trial like that against 18, 20 people you take to the High Court on multiple charges, the investigation alone takes you about 2 to 3 years. Then it takes about 3 to 4 years to prepare this thing, to get a High Court date, because that's where we really want those cases to be heard. So the reason it takes so long is we can produce more of those if the capability to tackle them in the detectives is expanded. The organized crime components of the detective, the anti-gang investigation components. And likewise, the prosecution capability is expanded. We have a specialized court, but we have few specialized prosecutors to handle the load.
Mm.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Mm.
And the one thing about the Cape Flats that tells us, with a life threat against me, it was also against a judge.
Mm.
Yeah, it was also against a prosecutor. So we really need to take care of our capability that we have in the criminal justice system to tackle these type of crimes. Because you see, gangs have nothing to lose. You're the only opposition. If they kill you, you're gone.
Mm.
Who's going to, besides the intimidation value of somebody else not wanting to touch it, whether it's a prosecutor, a judge, or whatever, the the issue is the disruption to a case while it's on. If something should happen to me, who is the key witness in the thing, where are they going to get a person who gives them the racketeering testimony? You understand what I'm saying? So, but if you had a system that produces and more detectives that are involved in this, especially, that capacitates the gang investigation unit, for example, then I would understand. But in a situation context where the president is ignored and he gets lied to and told them such a thing exists and then it doesn't exist. His president is moved around with the impression that
Things are moving.
It's there, everything, and then he was lied to by the National Commissioner. In actual fact, worse, those very people at the national level undermined it because it did not come from them. It came from
the story
ordinary
about
officers.
Charles Kinnear's
protection
detail was removed.
Yeah, I think that report speaks for itself. And even in the Kinnear matter there, you see the threat is against 4 people. It's me, Lincoln, Kinnear, and Jafta. We the 3 that are still alive. So it's no surprise why we must also be taken out.
And your detail, do you still have
it? It was withdrawn.
Why?
I don't even want to. You see, I think they are trying to play a game, well, despite a court order, to think whether they can test my financial capability to take them to court again. That's the game. It's plain arrogance. But the point is, I've seen that everything about the people involved in this decision for its withdrawal, about them personally and in terms of their own questionable history, gets recorded and gets placed on a safe place. And if anything should happen to me, it will be used. Besides the fact that this is not, I've written a letter to the National Commissioner, to everybody. This is not going to end up like Kinnear. And I say in the letter specifically, let's hope this report will not be ignored like it did with Kinnear's one, and then he got murdered. So those are things. And the other challenges, of course, I know the gangsters don't send about and discover in the air. They use police officers to find out what my movements are. They've always done it like that. So the point is there are things that need to be corrected. And our anti-corruption capability in the police is frighteningly under-resourced. I mean, last time I left, there were about 20 odd people for this province. I mean, it's ridiculous.
So there's only 20 policemen looking at corrupt activities
in this province. You go to in this province.
Oh,
but other thing, it's few. It's an undercapacitated capability.
Look, I saw recently where this policemen were caught with the guns.
Yeah,
and they were prosecuted, and I think they were given 15 years.
Yeah.
And there was such a small headlight.
No, you see, they don't. What's this one I can say about the police? It's those cases are cases we initiated and we followed through. But imagine, some of these cases took us 3-4 years. We had to do it secretly. We didn't have the kind of resources attached to it. So imagine we had a fully well-stocked anti-corruption capability in each province. We would be able to do much more. And you must understand the Hawks cannot fill that gap.
Yeah.
It is too small, it is too highly specialized, and we need the Hawks to focus on our international traffickers. They won't ever be able to deal with organized crime in this country at the scale at which is required. They're simply not built and made for that.
Let me just check if there's any questions. If you can read it out or ask questions. No? I want to come back to just part of my conclusion. Um, there's this quote, "coming home to me."
Yeah.
So I read it and I made that I also identify with it. You know, we've come a long way, and we all carry our baggages, and we've made mistakes. We did our regrets, but we're still standing, and we still remain true to our people. We remain true to our cause. What drove us then, as Lighties, you Lighty from Jeremy Vearey and Eka Faiez, the clone fund we just played. What drove us then still drives us in many ways, that generation. And so this coming home to me, maybe just share with the listeners, what does it mean for you?
Okay, for me, there's two things. There's a political side and there's a personal side to some degree. Although I don't like, if I said you mustn't separate the things, but for the sake of this argument, I'm going to start there. I think as comrades, even yourself, I think will recognize this. We've given everything because of how we love the people at the expense of our own family sometimes. We are leaders now. Let's show people an example of balance, man. Yeah? So part is going home to, you really have a family, man. Realize it. You know, you cannot be running around serving everybody. It's good. You must maintain, but now you must balance it because you must be an example on both fronts to people. You know, so that people who look up to you can say, no, the personal and the political is in balance, it's in harmony, and the one doesn't suffer at the expense of the other. So that's the one thing. You know, my life has been living for other people, going to Robben Island, I couldn't even see things beyond that. That's an important thing. And to me, at some stage, it became self-destructive, you know. And that to me is getting back in touch with it. I think the politics is the politics of the community. I am from Elsie's River, man. And my mother always, this is what my mother always means by coming home when she died. She says, okay, you in the ANC, you went there to Ireland and you came back and all of those things. And you say, every time I sat with my mother, she was a unionist, and I explained, things change. How the blah, blah, blah. Then she says, now you must go to Bialvini and Crown Road in Loosebos and Bialvini Road in Elsies. And then every day you must look whether the lights are the same, the streets are the same. So every time you tell me about a new policy in the country, she supported it. Every time you tell me about it, then just go look if it's like that in Elsies and Pontivalo and Google it too. And then we talk policy again. So part of always going home to your roots is not a romanticized thing only. It's about, if you have principles that we fought for, Faiez, it's the ultimate measure, is the difference it makes to people there and those poor circumstances. If it gets worse there, then our arguments and our principles don't mean nothing. You know, it means something, but it's something in our head. So then the only people who can correct that, we sometimes expect it must be somebody, the president or those things. We are the example, all activists in this Cape, to go and prove it. And it's what is said about the movement, our movement now, he said we've lost that, man. Some of us, you are doing it as an individual, this is the way you consider your role. Other people go, branches are only functioning, one is not attacking the socio-economic issues or civic issues inside the community base. They only come together once when we prepare for Congress, those kind of things, man. We've lost. So coming home means coming home to the people, man. And not only meeting them in rallies. But if you came from the streets, that is where the difference must be measured. And to me, part of it is I want to see what I do there,
home.
the difference. I mean, people can give you a medal here and this, and fine, you did this, and Operation Impy and that. Okay, yeah, no, fine, cancer stop, but Yalsis, Pontyville, Athlone, Mrs. Plain, Nyanga, Google it. That's where you must see the difference, you see. But I mean, one of the things I remember in the struggle we used to say, we can't feed people ideology every day. Feed them with things that make a material difference. And to me, there's only two questions that you must always answer. My mother, this is what I said in the book, my mother taught me this. Whenever you ask her something, she now spoke Afrikaans, but I translate into what difference does it make and what value are you adding to the people? And if you can't see that clearly in what you're doing, then you're doing the wrong thing.
Jeremy, thank you. On
Okay.
that note, I want to thank you for making time. Everybody, this has been a useful conversation, very
Okay.
profound. I like the last part that you said, make a difference. And we want to continue doing that. So thank you everybody for listening, and baie terima kasih for
Yeah,
coming in.
sure.
And thanks everybody. This was our show for this today, and we leave it there. Thanks so much.
Thanks. Okay. Thank you.